Is that better?
Yeah. Well, so far anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Okay.
had some pretty good breath going on there.
Okay. Let me fix that.
That's going in the bloopers right there.
No! I hate it so much.
Hey everybody, welcome to Lions Pride Tavern podcast number 79. Tonight we find out how we did in this weekend's continuing raid of Antorus the Burning Throne. And tonight, our infamous series, Dancing with the Bosses, continues. But before all that, let's start off with introductions. I'm your host, Stafford. I play a Dwarven Beastmaster Hunter in the awesome game World of Warcraft. Next up is JobUi.
Hi, I'm JobUi. I play a Worgen Mage.
And Lorelei.
Hello, it's Lorelei, your Night Elf Arms Warrior.
Epistle.
Greetings, Epistle, a Draenei Protection Paladin.
And Charity.
Hello, it's your Draenei Resto Shaman.
Awesome. How are you guys doing this week?
Great.
I know.
Good.
Big news. Charity got a new microphone. You can hear it.
Yay.
You can hear it. I hope
Yeah,
I
it
you
can
sounds
hear
good.
Charity.
Well,
Uh-huh.
you can hear it's different.
That's
Yeah.
true.
I've never had trouble hearing Charity. It just her signal
Oh.
always seems to be loud and clear.
Great.
Well, not always clear, but
Yep,
He's not saying you're loud. He's
no,
not
I'm saying your volume is appropriately adjusted. That's
I
all.
can just talk a little quieter if you like.
Well,
There's
that
my
would be
voice.
lovely.
Yeah, I had a pretty interesting week. I went to my first pro boxing match that I attended, and
Ooh.
also missed the first raid night in years.
Yes, you did.
I pretty much never miss raid night, and I missed raid night this week, or one night of raid night this week. But it was cool. I got to go see a Showtime pro boxing match, and it was exciting and interesting. I watched them all the time on online, but it was really cool to go see one in person.
So,
Nice.
now, granted, you're way out in the middle of nowhere. Where did you have to go to see this?
It was in Deadwood, South Dakota.
Oh, Deadwood. Yeah, okay.
Yep, and
Even though it's a little town, it is
yeah.
like 10,000 people, something like that?
yeah, it's a small little town, but it's a kind of a famous old town. You know, it was an old
Mhm.
gold mining town. A lot of famous names like I think like Wild Bill Hickok, and a number of others. You know, pretty famous for being around that old western town. I think the last time that there was a pro boxing match was something like 11 years ago or something. It was a really long time ago, and my wife spotted it online because they didn't advertise it very well either. And she's like, "Oh, did you know there's a boxing match going on in Deadwood tomorrow?" And I was like, "No, I didn't." And I was like, "I'm gonna get tickets and I'm gonna go watch it." And she's like, "All right, cool." So I went and it was pretty cool. It was like I said, I watched a lot of boxing, including Showtime boxing, for years, and it was kind of neat to see it from the the production side. Get to see it behind the camera kind of thing.
So, Deadwood, I'm sure people know that's also where the biker rally is. Is it going on right now? Is that why they did this?
No, the biker rally, the
It's in
motorcycle
Sturgis,
rally,
but it
Yeah.
always...
it
it
bleeds
always
over into
bleeds
Deadwood
over into
and
Deadwood.
to my hometown and whatnot. No, it doesn't. That happens towards the end of the summer.
That's what I thought.
This is just it was some special event, and I'm not sure why they chose Deadwood, but I'm glad they did.
You know, I did feel like you were still in the raid with us, though. It was like you just hadn't left on Friday night.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
At
heard
times. At times. There was like these squeaky moments where we were like, "That's not JobUi. What the hell is that?"
The
But it
ghost of
sounded
JobUi.
sort of. It sounded sort
It
of like
was the
JobUi.
dulcet tones of Tap,
Tappuccino
chewing us
took
out,
over. Yes.
telling us to move, stop standing in the junk. Though she did not use that
Stay
word.
focused. Stay focused.
I think one of our most famous lines was, "People, we've done this 1,000 times."
Mhm, Yep.
I'm not that bad. Yeah, most of the time.
No, you're not. but she
Well,
made
maybe
you out to be.
Argus. Maybe at Argus.
Oh well, yeah. Well, there has been some annoyance in Argus lately, but not too much.
Well, anytime somebody intimidates, or not intimidates, pretends to be another person, they overly dramatize it, so it's funnier.
Imitates?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
My caricature, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like fishing.
Sure.
You ask the guy what size fish he caught, and he'll tell you. But then the next time he tells it, it's a little bigger.
Right.
By the time he gets to his wife, it's like huge. So that's awesome. A pro boxing match. I've never been to one. I've been to boxing matches, but they're always amateur. Never done a pro one. I had the opportunity. We were looking for tickets. We were down in Vegas at the time. Some big pro boxer was there, but when we did find tickets, they were scalp tickets, and we were like, no, not $800 a ticket. No.
Yeah. Well, the seats that I got I was sitting basically third row of seats from the boxing ring. There was 2 rows ahead of me that were called ringside, and then there was my section, which was like the middle section, and I showed up a little early because it was general admittance. You could just sit wherever as long as you were in your section, and so I got like the front row of my section, which was basically ringside. Like if it was a Vegas fight, those would have been $1,000 seats, easy. I mean, because I was right up next to the ring. I could like see the expressions on their faces, and practically felt like I needed to dodge sweat flying off of them and whatnot.
Yeah.
That's funny because me and my buddy, we were trying to get these tickets, couldn't get them. So we decided we wanted to go see some sort of Vegas show. So we found some opera guy. I don't know who he was. It was really good, but we got some back of the room seats, and we were at a table with all these other people, but it was so crowded that our chairs were kind of out in the aisles. So when the security swept through, they're like, you guys can't be here because if there's a fire, that kind of stuff. We're like, oh, okay. So the valet that was there, she goes, do you want to move seats? And we're like, well, where? I mean, we paid for these. Right down front.
Nice.
Yeah.
So apparently when they don't sell the high dollar tickets, they still like to fill the seats. So the guy on stage thinks, hey, look, all those high dollar seats got filled. I could have reached up and slapped the guy. I could have. I mean, I was that close.
Sure. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. Like it's kind of nice. You go to these smaller events too, and it's I see boxing matches sometimes where it's like 80,000 people in an arena, and there's people like sitting in the upper bleachers that are like a quarter mile away from the actual boxing match. And I'm like you like watching ants run around in a square? Because that's basically what you see from there. Maybe they're just watching it on the Jumbotron or something. But no, it was really cool to be like right up next to the action and see it in person. And they were good fights too. There was a knockout and a TKO and pretty good fights.
Very cool. Yeah, my dad went to a Seahawks game and he had nosebleed seats. And he said he watched the entire game on the guy in front of him had one of those little mini portable TVs.
Actually, one of the boxers passed me by in the lobby just as I was talking to this other guy about who was boxing that night, and I said his name. I was like, "Oh, yeah, Branchik's fighting tonight." And I was like, "Oh," and I was like, "Oh, there's Branchik right there." And then Branchik like looked over and like gave me a thumbs up and like smiled at me and stuff. And then he walked into a restaurant nearby.
All right, paid advertisement by Branchik.
Yeah.
Well, I hope he pays us. I don't know if he will. So that's cool. That's really cool. I mean, it's always cool. I mean, JobUui and I are from, pretty small towns. We don't have any professional teams. So, all you people that have been to these NFL games and stuff like that, it's a big deal to us. I know there are people out there that buy season tickets and they're like, $10,000, $20,000 for a season tickets to go see the Kansas City Chiefs play. That's like, is that a thing? Are they still the Kansas City Chiefs, or is that somebody else now?
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm a Steelers fan, but I've never been to a Steelers game. Would love to go, but yeah, I've been by there. I went by the Harris Field, or whatever it is. We drove by it. I took a picture of the sign, Harrisburg. So, all right. Well, let's start off and tonight we got somebody new that's going to tell us how we did on Saturday because JobUui was at
You
a
mean
boxing match.
Friday.
Or Friday, yeah, Friday. So sorry about that. Lorelei, let's start us off.
Yeah. Well, we did really well on Friday night. We actually tried to get a little bit ahead of ourselves too. We started out with Guidotti, World Breaker on normal. We have to always do him. And we didn't have any problems, although there was a little bit of a messiness with the stacking, with the what they call the big circle things.
I would say it was more of a looseness.
Yeah, and it's because we're doing so well on that fight that I think people tend to get a little, slack with that,
Yeah.
with their mechanics. But we got through that one. Sorry, my voice still keeps going out. Can't get rid of that. And then we went on to Agrimar, and I believe we one-shot him and went on to Argus. And after getting talked too strongly last weekend, I don't think we had a problem dropping those soul blights anywhere Friday night.
I'm so glad
Nope.
to hear it.
No,
I think you scared people.
I think you did, and I told my wife before we started raiding. I said I'm not gonna. I know maybe it was my son. Anyway, one of them I was talking to, and they're like, "Who's gonna call the fights?" And I was like, "I'm not gonna do it. I'm just gonna go out there and let them do their thing. And when they screw up, I'll say, okay, look, this is what you need to do. Just like JobUui says." And I got to Argus and went, no.
You had to.
I still had to, make sure we take those straight back people, make sure we stack. We had some problems with putting the debuffs off to the side.
Yep. They got a little messy.
Yeah, they got really close together, and then they never got really far out there, but they got close together and they got swapped around.
Yeah, the DPS one got put in the back once.
Yeah.
And then there were some problems later on in the fight with the soul bombs going in the wrong direction. So I'm not sure if we need to tell people to put little Post-it notes on their computer, because I do that. I have a little pad that I keep in front of mine, and I always put down soul bomb to the whatever color we're using.
Right.
Because when you've got different things with the same kind of name, that gets confusing after a while.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's why,
Yep.
and JobUui and I talked about this a long time ago about, calling raids and stuff, because it's like, do you actually use the name so people see it, or do you use some sort of description of what it does, And, and JobUui can comment on his side, but I think it's a combination of both. I don't think you have to use the name all the time, but as long as you get that one descriptive characteristic about whatever mechanic it is, then people understand.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's generally true. That's why I call it like big bomb and little bomb, because or big ball and little ball above your head, because that's what they get. They either get a great big ball or a little ball.
Yeah, but that means that they have to pay attention to what DPM is saying too, because if they're trying to figure out, oh, do I have the big ball or the little ball, then and DBM saying, oh, you have a soul bomb, you got to figure out where do I go with the soul bomb? What's that?
Yeah, but better they pay attention to it than I have to.
Right. And they should.
Nice. Yeah.
It's as I keep saying, it's a matter of setting up your DBM so that you know what to expect. So if I have to get it out of the group, it's always run away, little girl.
Yes.
And, and if it's something that, like the bomb, I have that great big annoying blast sound goes off, because that gets my attention and I know I need to go to the right.
The foghorn?
Yeah, the foghorn.
Yeah, but Lorelei, that's why you're not one of the mechanics' usual suspects.
Yes.
Once in a while, I seem to worry if but it's just something you have to make sure you sit down and do when you're doing the fights. Once you get to see that, I have to move here, I have to move there, come up with a sound you use all the time.
But I think we've been raiding about 4 years together, Lorelei?
Yeah.
So I don't think I've ever gone, oh my God, was that Lorelei that just wiped a group?
No,
I don't think
there
I've
was.
ever had to say
There
that.
was. No.
If I notice that, I never
Two?
say.
When we did the maiden,
Yeah.
and you
Well.
guys would go on the opposite side from my guild.
Oh, is that
And I'd
you?
be like, I wouldn't pay attention because I'm like, okay, I know the fight, I know this, I know. Oh my God, I'm on the wrong side.
Yeah, and what's funny is with Lorelei, it's like I can only recall like one time that I saw her like really botch a mechanic, and I was like, "Did you get confused about that?" And she was
did.
like, "Yeah, I did," because like I was taken aback by the fact that she didn't do the mechanic correctly.
And because every fight that we've had where we've had to be on a side, it's always been on the opposite side.
Well, of
Maybe
course.
So I'm always having to change my DBM.
Maybe
No,
your other raid leader was like left-handed and I'm right-handed
Well,
or
you-
something.
That could be.
You didn't know that I was in contact with your raid leader, and I was like, "No, which side
Yeah,
do you
you'd
guys
say
have?"
let's
Okay,
let's screw up.
let's go to
we'll
the other
see,
side.
because
Let's screw up
it's like driving to work. Sometimes if I don't pay attention, I still get to work. I can't tell you how I did it, but my car did it for me.
Oh, I
Just
thought she was
don't,
going to say.
just don't drive on the wrong side of the
No,
road.
That's
no,
what I
no,
thought
no.
she was
I'll
gonna
stay
say.
in the right lane and hit the underpass, and I get to
Wow.
work.
I thought she was going to say, "Yeah, sometimes I drive on the right-hand side, sometimes I drive on the left-hand side."
No,
I
I'm
was
pretty
in the
good.
UK
My
this
car
summer.
does take
I
over
have some
for me.
stories of that.
Oh, I'm
All right,
sure.
so you got through Argus and
Yep. We got through Argus. We just had just a couple of little hiccups, but I think we only did that in one shot too, if I'm
We did.
right.
Yep.
And then we went on to Heroics. And I think we did really well on Guidotti for Heroics. I think people finally remembered don't run out with the big circles until we called for it, because somebody was calling for it at that point. And we did Fellhounds. We had a mispull of some kind, or it was a lot of
Yeah, that
bombs
was
went off.
no, that
If
was the
something
hunter's
bad
fault.
happened, and it was
That
just weird.
That was me.
Oh, was it you?
Stafford
Oh,
happened.
okay.
Yeah,
at least he
Stafford
owns
happened.
it, you know? I love it when
Yeah.
players own it.
I was moving I was doing kind of a walk around because I stream. So instead of just sitting in one spot, which I know is probably pretty boring, I kind of walk around, and as I was walking around, I hit my right mouse button and targeted the boss and shot a shot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'll do it.
I was like,
He's like,
"Oops,
"Oh."
Didn't like
that was
that
me."
at all.
Well, we were ready anyway.
Yeah.
He's like, check out this cool camera. Oops.
Yeah. And then we went on to, well, we got him down the second time. And then we went to ENR, and that went well, except for my little crazy thing that happened where I just almost jumped off the entire platform and died because I got out of range of heals. But everybody else finished the fight very well. And I finally actually got an upgrade on a piece of gear I already had. Still can't get the bracers that I need, but I got something.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
Congrats,
And
Dylan.
then
So
we,
then we tried one shot, I believe. No,
Two.
We tried two or three,
Just
two
two.
at least, on Portal Keeper, because Stafford wanted to get Portal Keeper down before JoeBuoy came back on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to say, yeah, we were on Kingaroth.
Yeah, we're almost done. But
I think
that
he
one we
did
just had a really
anyway.
hard time with that.
We
well,
started
I
the
tried.
raid, and Joe's like, "So where are we going?" "Oh yeah, we're on Kicker." And he's like, "Really? No. Where are you?"
Yeah, no.
Yeah, he was like, "No, you're not."
The lie was just a little too big.
Yeah.
Well, if you're
So
gonna
that's
lie,
where we
you gotta
ended
do it
up
good.
on Friday.
All right.
But it was a good run on Friday.
Awesome. I'm glad you guys did excellent without me there. And
Well,
Don't
we
tell him
had
that. We
you
need him.
there.
I gotta go look at the I gotta go watch the stream though, because I heard that that I was poked fun at in my absence, but I'll check that out.
Well, no, you were impersonated.
Oh, right, I was impersonated in my absence.
Tab
Right.
kept us in line. She told us off. She told us
Yeah,
off a couple
right.
of times.
All right. So Saturday we came back, and instead of going to the Portal Keeper, we went after Antorus High Command and got that down in one try in our fastest ever that we've done on Antorus High Command. We finished off there. I believe it was on the. Is it the general? Or is it the engineer? I can't remember. Anyway, it's the second boss in the series of the three bosses. Usually we end up at the third boss, was where we usually finish it off at. So that was really cool to see. Really fast kill on that one. Went to Portal Keeper, took down Portal Keeper without too much trouble. I think, did we have a wipe on that?
Let me
I
look.
don't.
Keeper,
I think we had one.
I think we did.
Yeah, we had one.
Yes.
Something went horrible with the tanks.
We actually
and the
had two
healers
wipes.
got killed. Did we have two?
We had two
Yeah.
wipes.
All right.
Well, there
so-
was one point where the imps came out, and they came out on the complete other side of the platform, and
that's
then we
right.
got the three beams, and nobody could get to them, and they all blew up.
Yeah, I actually didn't even see them. Because
I
like
didn't
I
either.
looked around and I was like, oh, all the imps are dead. I'll attack the boss. And then all of a sudden we all died, and I was like, was there imps? And you were like, yeah, they were on the other side. I'm like, oh, I didn't even see him. Anyway, we did get Portal Keeper down, though, and went on to take on Iminar, the Soul Hunter. And we had kind of a rough night for us on Iminar, the Soul Hunter. We've done that better in previous weeks. In fact, the first week we did Iminar, the Soul Hunter, we did it better than we did this week. The last pull, which was like right before we finished up, we managed to get Iminar down, and that's where our raid ended. But you know, it was still kind of a rough go at that. We tried a couple of little different things to change it up, but ultimately I think we just need to be a lot cleaner about moving across that bridge in general as a group.
Yeah, that's what did it. I mean, when you go back and look at the logs, it's always the transition. We get the boss to go to the second platform, we get across that platform just fine. We get him down on the other side with not too much problems. We had a couple laser beam issues, but it's always crossing back. Wow. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, we had 2 times where we just said, you know what? Jump off the edge. We're done.
I think that our problem is chatter. People,
I
like
agree.
JobUI has said before, they don't go, oh, sorry, I messed up. And then, oh, okay, and then we fix it. No, I messed up, I stood in the fire and I went to the left and oh God, it was so scary and there was a man and there was a woman and there was a dog and they were all here and we all had a picnic and just like, okay, we get it.
Yeah.
You died.
Yeah.
Over
You messed
explanation.
up.
Yeah,
We
there
need
was a
to
couple
fix
of
too
times
much
when
talking during a fight.
there's been a couple of times like this week even where somebody was like, they were explaining something. I'm like, yeah, we don't have time for that. Just quiet, please.
Unfortunately, we can explain why you did this and why it happened afterwards. That's
Right.
fine. But we're trying to get across the bridge now, so you need to shut up so we can coordinate.
Yeah. For now,
You're-
my bad will suffice.
Dead men
Yeah.
don't
Oh,
speak.
they set off my. There you go. There was a shepherd alarm this week at that boss.
I
because-
thought I
Yes, it
heard
was.
something.
Yeah.
Oh man, I was
Ooh.
so frustrated with the beams and the bombs because one, everybody was asking. They're like, okay, can you cleanse, say, JobUI? And he wasn't, but I'm using an example. JobUI was standing by 4 people when he asked to be cleansed. Do not ask to be cleansed if you're standing by 4 people.
As a
Just
reminder,
take
this is
it.
an example. JobUI was not standing by 4 people when he asked to be cleansed.
So,
Well, I think
or those 4 people go, oh look, JobUI has a bomb. Maybe I should move away. It was that
And-
simple.
Unless you're the tank, and
Oh,
we
well,
got put
yeah.
to sleep several times.
And then that too, the melee needs to run out, and the healers need to not cleanse them unless they're asked. That means
did
they're
see
far
s-
enough away. It's
I-
just there needs to be both ends. The healers need to know not to cleanse unless they're asked to cleanse, or they know there's no one around them. And the people need to go, okay, I'm clear, or be clear before they say, can you cleanse me?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I saw some melee trying to run out occasionally and not running far enough out. And
Well,
that's
they
Yeah,
would
that-
run on. Unfortunately, sometimes you run on a range, so you only have so much time. But the
Yeah.
range can move.
That's
No.
one thing I wanted to bring up tonight was maybe what we could do is have that section where the ramp leads up to the platform, keep that clear so
Yeah.
that anybody can run to that spot. Because I had that problem too where I got it and I turned to run out and there's 3 range standing right there. So what do I do? Well, I'm going to say if you're not going to move, you're going to fall asleep.
Yeah, and honestly, if there's not a clear spot, you should be running to the range because it's far better you do that than you drop it on the tanks.
Yeah.
But I was actually thinking a very similar thing that we should set a marker up and just say, don't hang out around that marker. That's for the melee to run out to. And I think we're going to do that for next week.
That'd be
Good.
fun.
Yeah, and we got to make sure that we specify melee because
Oh, yeah.
invariably you're going to get some range guys on one side of the
Nope.
boss and run clear to the other side just to get to that spot.
Yeah, right through
Range-
boss and
range
put the
has got
tank
all
to
Yes,
sleep,
and
yeah.
put the tanks to sleep.
Yeah,
Yes,
range have all kinds of space to figure it out. We're going to set a spot. We're going to be like, that's for the melee. if you're not a melee with the sleep canister, you don't go there, and that's all there is to it.
Well, sometimes some of our ranged are a bit spaced out already.
Well, yeah, but hopefully.
Yeah.
What?
It might take him a little bit, but at least
Yeah,
if we have
exactly.
a designated
Designated
spot,
point.
maybe they'll do it.
No, I want to
Nicely
say,
played.
I just want to say, I was sitting there and I got the canister and there was nobody around me. I said, please dispel Stafford. And I sat there and I sat there. I said, no, dispel Stafford. And I sat there and I sat there. I think it was the third time I asked. And I finally
am on
got
one
dispelled.
side of the room, and I let the healers be on the other, so we can reach everyone.
Well, I think they were just ignoring me.
Oh, but by the way, on our final kill where we actually killed Iminar, the Soul Hunter, I died and Stafford lived. So there's
Yes.
there's
What?
Yes.
Yeah, but now in my defense, I was killed by other players on the bridge. But
You know what? I heard that because I heard you saying, "Oh, Jobui's dead." I just heard in your voice, "Yeah, it wasn't you."
Well,
No,
it was funny.
he did the whole like monologue thing he does when he's frustrated and something happens to him. He talks about what's happening as it's happening out loud. Oh, and then the guy's gonna roll over and I'm dead.
Can you tell we've been waiting for a while together?
Just a little bit.
Yep. Yeah.
Too funny.
My death monologue. Is that what happens?
Yeah, well, and then we had I think we had one res left, and we were like down. I think we had them at 20%, and they're like, "Should we use up the res?" And I went, "Yeah, let's get up." And I think I said Jobuui, and about that time, I think a pistol went down.
Yeah.
And
You were about to get me up, and
And
then
on
died.
Iminar? Was that on Iminar? Because we
Yeah.
generally don't want to use a res for anyone because it's brutal on the tanks at the end.
yeah, well, and thank God that they weren't listening to me again because they didn't get Jobuui up.
Oh my gosh,
they
the
paused.
arguing. Oh,
Wait,
well, I'm
were you
the top.
talking in the
Oh, well,
last
this
raid? I
person's
didn't hear
the
you.
top. Oh, who cares? Just res him.
Yeah. I
Well,
actually
that's
had
why we
one
say-
moment.
Yep.
I
That's why.
actually had one moment during the raid when I called for a player to get rezzed because I needed his DPS at that moment. And then somebody else was like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I don't care, res him. Just do what I
Yeah,
said.
he didn't have DPS because he was dead.
Yeah. But
We all know he's the top when he's
yeah,
not dead.
he's a top DPS, and I needed his AoE on those imps.
Yeah.
And that was all there was to it.
Why
Well, I
does
think
it matter?
whoever was talking wasn't actually saying,
No,
"Oh,
they
let's not
weren't.
have a discussion about it," but it sounded like they're having a
It
discussion
certainly
about it.
did, and I was all like, ah.
Yeah, I think it was a misunderstanding. You're right,
It was, and they
Abyssal.
said so. They were like, "Oh, I wasn't trying to say that." I was like, "It's cool. Let's move on."
But it was, yeah, another explanation of, oh, well, I just was saying that, oh, it just happens to be, haha, because it's funny. But no,
Yeah.
we're not joking right now. Just res him.
It's a little like one of those bad movies, you know. I'm going to now explain all the fight as it happens, and oh look, the boss is starting to. No, just push the buttons, do the thing.
No, serious face,
Do
kill
the
boss.
thing. I love it. Push the buttons. Do the thing.
Too funny.
All right.
All right. Well, we got to move on. We got to do our dancing with the bosses.
Oh, we should
go
we should
ahead.
cover like some of the stuff we saw new this week.
Oh,
First, but I
absolutely.
think-
Let's do that first. Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything new anybody learned this week?
Yeah. There is something that we noticed. There's some weird music when you defeat a boss going on. It's kind of funny little, kind of campy sounding music that's been happening, and we found where that's coming from. DBM put up a setting. It's under, if you do /DBM to open up the DBM settings, Deadly Boss Mods, and you go to Options tab, and then about halfway down, there's Event Sounds. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see Set Sound Played for Encounter Victory. And it's set to SMG FF Fanfare, which is really kind of hokey and cheesy. And it plays at the end of every boss fight. And I was like, what is that music coming from? It's coming from right there. So if you want to turn that off, go to that option. It's Options, Event Sounds, and then change SMG FF Fanfare to None and close it up, and it will be gone for you.
Well, are there
Yeah.
other options? Maybe there's better music.
There is another option in there that says Blackbird FF Fanfare Temporary Version, which is even cheesier than the SMG FF Fanfare.
Well, to be fair, there are add-ons people that install. I'm not saying who, some cool healers out there that have installed that go and play Mario music when you win.
That could be cool, I suppose.
If you choose to do that, yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
if they, if you choose to be cool like that and play that.
If
I think
you're
we're
into it.
saying we love DBM. You guys are wonderful. We appreciate all your work. We're so
Absolutely.
grateful. We didn't need any cheese on this on the top
Yeah.
of this though.
Yeah, I like my boss kills like pretty straight up. No extra cheese, please.
See, not me. I want sprinkle.
So Fluffy, I'm gonna die.
Yay!
Yeah.
What else did we learn?
I got AOTC this week.
Oh, that's
listen
so
to
him.
2 weeks
Listen to
ago
him
for
say it so
me.
casually.
Gosh.
Yep,
Listen
I
to
got
him. Oh, I got AOTC.
I was thinking about it. I kind of wanted to get a look at some of the last bosses before we get to it, just so it would make it easier for me to explain the differences to our raiders, and just to get a look at it, ahead of time. And I found a group that was just looking for players that were 960 item level or above, which I qualified for. They invited me right away. We went in and we one-shotted Agramar and Argus, and I was really, really shocked about the Argus heroic fight. I was expecting, because I hadn't really looked into the mechanical differences in Argus heroic, but it is effectively the same. There are only a few differences, which, they are important, but you almost won't notice them
Well,
in general.
everything hits like a truck, but
Yeah, tanks get hit twice as hard. The buffs that drop, that we put to the side there, I think it's the Sky and Sea buff that we get. Those only last for 30 seconds, so you got to get the second charge of that quicker. You don't have a lot of extra time to grab the second charge or the third. And then the only other thing is the big ads can, once you interrupt them, they're immune to interrupts for 20 seconds. And that's the only difference in the whole fight. Otherwise, it's just heavier hitting and boss has more health.
Some of our listeners will probably want to know what AOTC is. We've talked about it before, but they may not know it's ahead of the curve.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, ahead of the curve.
Yeah, it's one of the achievements, right?
Yeah, it's an achievement that Blizzard puts out there, like before the next raid comes out or before the next expansion. If you beat the heroic version of the current raid boss before either the next raid comes out or before the next expansion comes out, whichever comes first, then
or the nerf.
or a nerf, then they will give. Oftentimes, these days they give you a cool mount. In this case, it's a glowy looking bird. That's pretty neat looking.
Okay.
Well, it is. It's pretty neat looking, and it has a really cool mount special. I like mount specials, and if you type /mount special on it, it does a loop, which is pretty cool.
Oh, does the little raise in the air? Oh no, it's a bird. So it's
It's a
spin in
bird.
the air.
Yeah, so it goes like forward and does like a backwards loop to loop, and then
Nice.
goes back to its normal position. Pretty cool. And you get an achievement, and a lot of people require AOTC as like your ticket into their pug group.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
And there are groups out there I've heard of that like in the last expansion there was the Moose Friend group or something like that, or the Friend Moose group or something. And there's another one that's like that, where they've got like a lottery. If you watch their live stream, they'll bring you in and help you get this mount before it's gone, and they'll help you beat heroic Argus. I just joined a group that was just looking for 960 or above players, and they accepted me right away. I think they needed somebody with a hero, and so they invited me. So I got in. But it was cool to see still, and it was nice to finish that up and get a look at it before we get to it as a group.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Don't sell yourself short. They probably were like, oh, that's JoBui. He's on that cool new podcast. We got to get him in here.
Well,
Yeah.
To be fair, I was third on the DPS meters at the end of the fight, so
OMG, there he goes.
I did help.
Nice.
So how far out do you think we are from being able to do that?
I think we could handle that fight if we could get there. Honestly, Well, if people do their soul blights
Do
correctly.
the mechanics, yeah.
If
It's
they,
not
if,
far-fetched for our group. We just have to
if
focus.
they do the mechanics correctly, I think we've got it. The DPS is really strong with our group right now. I think we've got the numbers to beat the Berserk timer on that. I think that most of our players generally handle the mechanics really well, and if they do it clean on that fight, I don't think that fight is going to be a major problem. I also don't think that the Argus fight is going to be too much of a problem as long as we have the appropriate CCs for that fight, or
You
the
know,
Agromar fight.
I think the force is strong with Jobui here. He or Obi-Wan Jobui. You said the DPS is strong with us.
It is, and it's getting stronger.
Yes, it is. I've been watching the numbers creep up just lately.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, some pretty impressive ones.
Yeah, really good.
I mean, guys that were normally always at the bottom, now they're creeping up, and they're hitting over 1 million. It's like, wow, this is amazing.
We've got players that are floating close to 2 million right
Oh
now.
yeah, some that are peaking at 3.
Yeah, and you know, so our DPS is doing really well. The heals have been keeping up. I think the heals can handle that particular fight. Our tanks are strong, and they're good at their mitigation stuff, like 95% of the time.
Oh, strong as our tanks.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm confident that like once we get through some of these mechanics, I think our Achilles heel on the way to defeating Heroic Argus is actually going to be the Coven on Heroic. If I had to make a prediction.
Ooh, yeah, the Coven.
Speaking of Coven,
That's our Dancing with the Bosses this week. And Stafford's favorite bosses. Yes, the Coven.
oy vey.
All right, but I'm not going to be explaining it, so you guys will have to elaborate for me.
Wait, we have to explain why you like Kevin?
I'm not going to explain
I'm
why.
not going anywhere near that.
All right, fine.
He likes their shoes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
shoes.
He noticed their shoes.
I think he likes their
Well,
bra
I noticed
size.
their shoes, and then he noticed
large
their
tracts
shoes.
of land.
Yeah.
So, all right. So this is our little deal here where we dance with the boss, and we tell from our perspective as what we play, ranged, melee, tank, healer, what we exactly do for the Coven of Shivara. Jobui?
Okay. On this fight, there are 2 bosses that are active at any given time, and a third boss who's kind of off doing its own thing in the corner. It's like summoning the ads. I guess that's the story behind it. So basically my job as a ranged is to kind of hang out in the middle and to do my best to attack both of the bosses as much as I can. That's partially dependent on how far apart the tanks place the bosses, but I will say that our tanks have been working hard to place the bosses within range of my attacks so that I can get both of them at the same time, which helps because the bosses share a health pool. So if I can hit both of them, then I'm doing extra damage on those bosses, and that's great. Now the boss that's off doing its own thing is going to summon an ability, or ads, and they have different names. There's like Golganeth and Amanthul, and I think there's Norganon and something else, but I forget what the other ones what they're all called. The important one to really look out for though is Amanthul. Because Amanthul is going to summon a number of ads that show up around the room, and they're really strong. They got a lot of health, and they start casting as soon as they appear. And once they finish their cast, they heal themselves back up to full, and also there's damage going out to everybody at the same time. So usually our group will hero when those come out, and we'll attack one at a time, going around the room. We usually do it clockwise, but you can do it however you like, and the other one that's kind of important is there's I believe it's Norganon, if I remember correctly. It'll summon a group of ads that stand in a row coming from every direction, and you have to slow them, or DKs can grip them, or you can stun them or CC them in one way or another so that you can create a space to get through them. It's kind of similar to some other fights in the past. There was one in the Night Hold where we had to do something similar, where we had to slow things down and speed them up to make a gap between them to get through. Because if you run through them, you take a lot of damage. So try and move through those. There's some flamethrower guys that come out from one of them. I believe that one is... boy, I can't remember what the name of that one is. But there's a flamethrower one that comes out, and for that one, you just have to get out of the center and make sure you're not standing in there, and then you have to kill all the ads around the room. Then there's another one that brings up some ads that are spaced out around the edges of the room, but it also puts a debuff on every player, where if you are standing within 2 yards of any other player, you will inflict 2.7 million, or I guess it's a little less than that. Hold on. Under normal, it's 1.4 million damage to any player, like every second that you are next to them. So if there's a couple of players standing next to each other, they kill each other really fast. So you got to be 2 yards spread apart. And then we just kill all the big ads and avoid other players during that time. Otherwise, it's avoid some there's these daggers, these purple dagger things that the bosses send out towards us, and they will also send out the occasional like flaming tornado that swirls near different players, and we basically just do as much damage to the boss while taking care of those ad groups that come up as they appear, and that's pretty much it for ranged DPS.
Wow, I didn't realize there was so much going on. I never see all of this.
Oh yeah.
Oh my. Because he's
I never-
probably dead.
I never
Usually see this on the
all
floor,
this.
right?
No,
Yeah.
no, no.
Oh, you're distracted.
Yeah, I never see
Yeah,
it.
he's not watching what's going on in the front of
No,
the fight. He's
no.
standing in the back of the room
No, I think
he's a
it-
big
with his little
anatomy
wow
fan.
camera.
I'm not sure whether it's the front or the back that is. Well, never mind.
Yeah, well, no, it's the front, and you can see it on the live stream, like a whole 10 minutes of it.
Mhm.
What do you say?
So you'll have to watch the other live streams if you want to see the fight.
Or if you'd rather not, you can watch mine.
Well, that's what I mean. If you'd rather not see what I'm seeing, then you have to watch the other streams. So, anyway, Lorelei, from a melee perspective.
Yeah,
Well,
don't
this
cross the
fight
streams.
is definitely not melee friendly. If the strategy where I think we get one of the hunters to make a space in the Norganon line, that's not too bad because you can get through that. Just standing in the right place is where we have our problem. And the worst one is the torment of Galganeth with the lightning strikes, because I will have to say this. One, I've learned not to charge into that one because somebody's always standing there when I charge in. And two, range likes to creep up on that fight, and they need to be careful not to do that because melee has a really hard time finding places to stand. When I die in that fight, that's where I always die, is getting hit with that lightning damage, or somebody says, "Oh, somebody ran up and killed me with the lightning damage." Well, you need to give melee space to move. So that's what we do. We have to just stand out of the range of everything, run around, kill the bosses when we can, but that one ad is just, it gets on my nerves.
Nice. All right. From a tanking perspective.
This one's actually fairly straightforward in a anxiety-producing way. They've managed to, do a tank swap and make it more nerve-wracking. And the way they did that is there's a couple of stacks that one of the bosses will stack on the tank, either a flash freeze or a fiery strike. They build up. After 3, it starts getting really unpleasant, so you have to do your typical tank swap and switch between the two bosses. Sometimes one of the bosses out, sometimes 2 are out. Sometimes a tank has an ability to mitigate one of the effects. For example, my Pally can mitigate the flash freeze. I just need to hit my Blessing of Freedom, and it takes off that particular stack. So, there's ways of getting around some of that mechanic, but you have to taunt back and forth. But just to make tanking life interesting, and this is where they threw us the curveball, only 2 out of 3 bosses are on at once. And if we mark them, when they come back down to the floor, I believe they become unmarked. So I usually use the boss raid frame on the right hand side, and they click back and forth and then do a taunt, so I don't even have to look at where the boss is in the space, just know that it's within range. If we got our positioning all set up, it's fairly straightforward that way. But then from time to time, one of the bosses will come out, swap up, and then our marks will be gone, and then I have to remember which one am I actually on right now and which one am I pulling, and it's a little bit of a sort of a shell game going on, trying to make sure you've got the right boss and are taunting the right one. If you get it wrong, you use the taunt the boss you've already got, your other tank might be getting that fourth stack, and things will get very unpleasant. So that's a bit of a trick for us to try to juggle and make that work. The other thing, of course, is when we get the marching band. Again, I forget the name of this, but when we get the marching band, it's we have to move our position pretty quickly and see who's done what kind of crowd control and see where the gaps are going to be. I always think it's kind of fun to stand in the place where I know that they're going to disappear, because I've got my floor positioning really worked out very well. So I'm always seeing the marching band when it comes across the room and getting closer and closer and closer to me, and I watch all the melee or range leap or run away, but I know it's not going to come anymore. It's like that Return of the King movie thing with the orc chieftain with the rocks coming towards and just sidestepped. It feels a little like that moment as everyone else is all running helter-skelter. But otherwise, as for the tank positioning, we've got it set up. We exactly know where we're going to be, how far apart we need to be, and other than having to move for a couple effects, everyone else has to run around. So it's just the swap that is the part that's a bit nerve-wracking for us.
All right. And from a healing perspective, Shepard.
I've never really stopped to think about this fight before, but I think this is my favorite fight, because this is the fight where if you mess up, it's your fault and you're gonna die, and I can do nothing about it, because the mechanics in this fight are death. That if you mess up, you're dead. That's it. So pretty much this fight, I just heal as much as I can. I follow everyone around. I stay out of the stuff just like any other DPS. You get to the outsides when the fire comes. You follow everybody when the big statues start to come inward. You stay away from other people when they're running around trying to kill the other things, and the lightning kills you. Everything you do kills you. So my job is pretty much typically just to keep you alive in between that stuff. It's just regular healing, some cooldowns in between, but mostly it's about you guys doing your job. So it's pretty relaxing for me.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, there's I don't really think there's too much to this fight, but I don't see much. Sorry. And when I die, I'm in a fluffy pillow of fluffiness.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, jeez.
All right, moving on. I think it's time. I hear the music. It's time for Lorelei's Pet Battle Minute.
Hello, pet battlers. I can't believe I haven't talked about this new pet yet. It's a slobbery dog, and his name is Grumpy. You can get him after completing a quest line in Bradenstock. And the quest requires a character of at least level 98, and he can be found in the burning house in Bradensbrook. Grumpy's on the second floor of the house, and there are no prerequisites for the quest. It's easy to overlook it. There are no breadcrumbs. Just run up into the house. If you don't see him, run out of the house, run back in, make sure you run through the fire, and check out every room. He'll be there. So today I'm going to finish up, or start up rather, with some of the McGarry zones and the new pet tamers out there. This zone uses still many of our favorite pets from the other zone, but there are a few changes to make things a little more interesting. First up is Marcus. You can start off with any level 25 pet. You'll be passing as soon as the fight starts. The strategy allows your other pets to get their important attacks off. Your second pet should be your unborn Valkyr, and use Shadow Shock until Marcus forces you to switch out. Bring up Icky and use his Black Claw Flock combo. He'll die soon, so don't worry. Replace him with your random first pet, and any attack should finish him off. This zone seems to like this kind of strat where you have to pass, and you'll use this with the Bucky Pet Tamer. Start with any random 25 pet, pass, bring in Chrominius, and use Howl and Surge of Power. And the rest of this fight is going to finish up like Marcus, where you bring in Icky, use Blackclaw and Flock, and when he dies off, bring your random pet out and use any standard attack. To end today's suggestions, we'll visit Snoz. This one is a little bit different. Start off with Icky and use your Blackclaw attack. He will get switched out before you can attack again. Use your second pet, a Bloodgazer hatchling, and use his swarm attack. This pet will also get switched out, and you can finish up with your Direbeak hatchling. Use Predatory Strike until Snoz is dead. Blizzard likes this theme about switching out pets, so you're going to be using it a lot in this zone. Try out these teams and see how they work, and I'll be back next week to finish off this area. As always, check out Zufu's Pet Strategy Guide and Hazelnutty's Pet Guides for teams that will work for you.
And there's
Getting Thieves with JobUI.
So, you want better DPS? Of course you do. I don't think I've ever met a DPS player that didn't want to do more damage. You've already studied your class and spec, optimized your talents, gemmed and enchanted all your gear perfectly, and practiced your rotation until it's burned into your muscle memory. But what else can you do? Get better gear, of course. How, you ask? Well, first you can build an altar to the almighty gods of RNG, random number generators, because RNG is going to play a huge role in what gear you end up with. RNG is just a fact every WoW player has to live with. However, there are things you can do to improve your odds. Starting off at level 110, there are world quests available that drop gear to help you get on the road to awesome DPS. The gear they provide will improve as your item level does. Emissary cash boxes have been known to drop a legendary now and then as well, so don't pass those up. World bosses on the Broken Isles drop 900 gear. Unsullied gear tokens that drop from up on Argus produce 880 gear. There are also relinquished tokens available on the Vindicar for 650 Veiled Argonite that will produce a 910 item for you. When you hit item level 890, you can queue up for Antorus the Burning Throne LFR, which drops 915 to 925 gear, including tier bonus gear. Regular Mythic Dungeons drop 885 gear. Greater Invasion Point bosses on Argus can drop 930 gear. Mythic Plus Dungeons drop gear ranging all the way up to 940 item level depending on the difficulty you do. If you do a complete Mythic Plus Dungeon, you'll get a weekly chest in your class hall that'll drop a piece of gear 20 item levels higher than the dungeon you completed. You can do it every week, and it's entirely based on the highest Mythic Plus dungeon you completed. So if you did a plus 15, you get a piece of 960 gear out of your class hall chest after the weekly reset. Normal Antorus the Burning Throne drops 930 to 940 gear. Heroic drops 945 to 955 gear. And Mythic drops 960 to 970 gear. Phew, that's a lot of places to get gear. And all of that can Warforge or Titanforge to a higher item level. And don't forget about your bonus rolls. You can get 3 per week, and sometimes more if Broken Shore neither Disruptor is up with the right effect, or you get a Class Hall mission bonus. Every time you use a bonus roll, and it fails to get you some loot, the next bonus roll chance improves. So even if your bonus rolls are failing you, and they will, eventually they will net you something. So use them often and wisely. I hope that helps you with some ideas of where to find loot to help you keep getting those deeps.
and our tank in address.
What's wrong with tanking? What's wrong with tanking? What's wrong with tanking in a dress? What's wrong with tanking? What's wrong with tanking? What's wrong with tanking in a dress?
This week's Come At Me a Tanking Minute, Honor Among Tanks. So, what happens when something goes terribly, horribly awry in one of your raids? What happens if somebody mistaunts or does something that ends up causing a raid wipe? At this stage in our raids, we've finished learning the fights. We've kind of gone on past where we make errors from week to week. And now we're getting to the point where if you really goof up and it's noticeable, you're kind of exposed. And as a tank, it's a bit nerve-wracking. Now, I do know that it's important for people to understand why have we succeeded or why did an attempt not work. The thing I like about our raid group is we tend to be able to identify and diagnose why is it that things, went wrong. I mean, when you blow it, you do tend to want to hide under a rock and not tell anybody. Especially as a tank, you're just out there, and people will notice if you mess up and, say you turn the boss to the raid and kill everybody. Agrimar as a fight, for example, comes to mind. Now, while I think confession is good for the soul and it's good to be clear, what if somebody else is making the mistake? What if the other tank makes a mistake? Would you call them out? Well, my sense is no. I tend never to call anybody out on their mistakes. I will tend to confess mine. So if I've blown it, I like to say, yep, that was me. I made a mistake. And then we move on, or at least you kind of hope we move on. Sometimes if you got a good group, they will razz you a little bit and give you some grief. But it's better to be able to know what the problem is to be able to get better. But I won't call out another tank. Not that Darg ever makes any mistakes. I will whisper a DPS, though, if I think they made a mistake that was really not so great. So even in the last raid, I whispered a couple people about a specific issue that I think might have caused some problems. But then that's something for them to solve and work out, and there may be a number of reasons why they had a problem as well. So I wouldn't call anybody out, and I think it's probably better to let people know if you've made a mistake. But I still have my what I call don't call attention to your mistakes rule. So if it was a bit of a dog's breakfast and there was a cascade failure and there's some sort of problem and maybe you could have saved the day with the right cooldown in the right time, the right way, I tend to say, don't call attention to that. Just get ready for the next pull and move on. And that's Come At Me, a Tanking Minute.
And then there's...
Baby, you got the heals. Now heal and don't die, 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 die. Heal and don't die, 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 die.
This week's Splash into Heals, the panic moment. Healing is one of the most intimidating things. As a DPS, you mess up, and healers and tanks can usually fix it. As a tank, you mess up, and most of the time it can be salvaged. But if you freak out and mess up as a healer in that live and die moment, well, it's over. Plus, for some reason, it's always your fault. You get to hear that famous saying, well, I guess I just didn't get healed. No one can fix a healer's mess up, except your fellow healers, of course, if you're in a raid. So panicking is the worst thing you can do in a raid. Once you panic, you miss click cooldowns, you don't focus, you don't know who to heal, and no, we're dying, dead. But if you don't panic, you just go, all well, just click the next button, just chillax, just pretend you're Crust from Finding Nemo. Chill, dude. That doesn't mean slow down. It's all about reacting, just reacting to what's happening and prepare for what's going to happen next. If you don't, well, next time you know that Johnny Stands in Fire takes extra damage at this part because he's standing in fire and he gets that pretty little debuff. So give him a hot next time. Or if the whole raid starts taking damage at a transition, you know to save your cooldowns for that. There's a spell for everything, and you just got to figure out what spell you're supposed to use for those things. Otherwise, well, Johnny's gonna die. Sometimes Johnny is dead, and you just can't fix it. All well, Avita say, Johnny, rest in peace. We'll res you in 5. Learn from it. Figure out what you did, or what they did, and come back at it the next time. The more mistakes you make, the more you know what not to do, or how to respond to those bad things that happen. Every healer, as we learned from our last podcast, has a response to save the day. Gain knowledge from them and apply that knowledge to the next time, and you'll be on your way to fantastic healing. And that is this week's Splash into Heals.
Very good. All right. And then there's... It's WFN News, Warcraft Stafford News. The Neither Disruptor is up next at the Broken Shores with Epic Hunter and what JoeBui was talking about, the Seal of Fate. Get your extra 3 seals this week with the Seal of Fate down on the shores. The weekly event is the Time Walking Dungeon Cataclysm. Yeah. WoW tokens are 181 in the States from 178 last week. And what's really cool, I don't know if you've done this yet, but the Unguro Crater Madness starts Saturday midnight and ends Monday midnight. Go out and check that out in the Unguro Crater. It's madness. Well, guys, we've reached our time. I think it was a pretty good podcast. We did pretty well.
Yep. Need to not read so fast.
I messed up one time. I'm so proud of myself.
Let's thank Charm for all of her beautiful music. And go visit her website and her YouTube channel. Links are in the description below. Plus BenSound at bensound.com and Vincent Moretto for all the heavy metal tavern music. So, guys, thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
See you.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
guys.
I kissed an orc and I liked it. The taste of his vocal chapstick. I kissed an orc just to try it. I hope my ally friends don't mind it. It felt so wrong, it felt so right. Don't meet up in love tonight.
Hey, everybody, welcome to... Yeah, where are we at? Oh, right here. Okay.
We're right
Hey.
here in your
Welcome
computer.
to today.
We're in your podcast.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Lions Pride. Oh, no, I got to do
You
this.
are the mistake
No, I-
Oh
person
boy,
this
I-
week.
this is the day. This is the
I
day.
switched screens because I need my mistake
Mhm.
screen
Yeah,
up.
that's his story.
Because I got to be able to write
If
down
this
that
were
we're
a
making
rocket
mistakes.
launch, oh boy,
He just,
fuel
wanted
spill.
to, he
and
just wanted to write
explosions.
down all of his mistakes that he's making. He's like, oh, I screwed up and I started over. I screwed up and I started over.
Because if you die, it's usually because you f***ed up. Oh, I can't say that word. All right, we have to start over.